Thank you very much. So I'm Craig Chapple. I'm a senior editor of PocketGamer.biz. Kind of responsible for what you see on the site, although if Ian's here, he writes most of it. But he's not here, so I do all of it. But it's enough about me. So we've got John Middleton here from Nifty Games. I have a bit of a bio here, but you can correct me if anything is incorrect. As a games industry veteran of over 20 years, John's held executive leadership roles in digital content, so made fire with game publishing at Pulse Entertainment, game hardware Mad Cats. You've been the CEO of various companies and also co-founded them, so Boom in-game music, massive in-game entertainment, 8 cylinders. And now you've just set up Nifty Games with a focus on sports for mobile and digital platforms. And you've raised $3 million, I believe?
Yes, $3 million.
So
today, that's seed round.
Okay. So I guess the first question, just so everyone understands a bit more about what you're doing. So could you tell us kind of the reasons you formed Nifty and what the company's up to?
Sure. Thank you. So we started Nifty a while back where we were looking at different, I guess primarily between myself and my partner Pete Wannett, who's back in California. In all honesty, it sounds a bit trite, but I think one of the major reasons we're very passionate sport fans. Pete comes from a background where he was at ESPN way back in the day at Acclaim. He worked on NBA Jam and Big Hurt Baseball, All-Star Baseball, NFL Quarterback Club. I've worked over the years with a lot of different sports leagues and athletes on different projects within gaming. And it's one of these things where we've had this project in mind for quite a while, and the opportunity kind of continued to be evident. And so as we rolled along, we decided to go for it, and we started raising early last year. We closed our seed round in right about October, and announced it in November, and now we're moving further into the business side of building up the company and the games, as well as external relationships.
So you're saying you focus on sports. Why do you think there's such a big opportunity in sports now? And are there specific areas within sport that are of the most interest? Because it's quite a broad area.
Actually, I got the mic here. It's interesting because sport games as a genre, it's not really so much a genre as it is almost a theme, because it's sports. So basically, looking at the success that's been around sports for the last really 15 years has been mostly in the high-end sims with FIFA and Madden football, as well as 2K basketball. Really on the console side, very much driven by the big kind of traditional AAA publishers. More recently, I think there's been efforts in mobile that have, I'd say, shown some real appeal to where there's mass market sports fans that are looking for content that is more relative to them on a day-to-day basis, and lets them engage with their favorite sports on an ongoing basis. And that's, I think, a really big thing. And for us, it's all about looking at ways to not just address gamers on a user acquisition basis, but also looking for fans, people that already have a predisposition towards these sports and towards teams and leagues and players, where they have a higher proclivity towards engaging in the game and staying in the game.
You're talking a bit about licenses there. Do these kind of, we'll get to that, but do these kind of games require those licenses if you're looking at it from a user acquisition perspective, or is there a big audience just for these sports games that is also untapped?
Well, I don't think they require them. I think that there's, even right here in the UK, obviously Golf Clash has done great on mobile. Playdemic's done a great job of kind of bringing golf and kind of that easy to play, hard to master kind of gameplay. Frankly, myself, I've always loved New Star Soccer. I'm a big fan of that one over the years. That's my playing game. So I think they've done a great job as well. I think you don't necessarily need to have licenses involved or even player licenses or any kind of affiliation. But I can also say it certainly helps. And, from our standpoint, we've got investment from a lot of different professional sports team owners, particularly in the U.S. So, it's interesting to see. It's really what's the easiest and best way to find communities where you can then go and expose them to your game and keep them entertained.
So you had quite some big name investors that are involved in sports. I know there's some things you can't talk about, but are these companies, so sports brands, teams, companies, are they looking at mobile as an opportunity, or increasingly so, or they've always been there, or is now the time to get involved with them? Well,
I mean, in this case, I think we've announced a lot of it. So, Axiomatic is our lead investor. Axiomatic is a group that is investing in gaming that you probably, a lot of people have maybe heard they'd invest in Epic recently and the Niantic they announced last week. But their background is really entertainment and then professional sports. And in the U.S., they own in combination, the partners in Axiomatic own about 15 to 18 different professional sports teams between the NFL, NBA, NHL, and Major League Baseball. We've also got Pagula Sports Entertainment, which owns the Buffalo Bills in the NFL, and then the Buffalo Sabres in the NHL involved as well. So I think they're not necessarily looking at ways. For them, it's about how do they engage their communities, how do they engage their fan bases. It's all about engagement. It's all about fan reward, fan satisfaction. I think they look at the fact that as team owners on an individual basis, not on a league basis, I think the leagues have always been thrilled with the idea of these big partnerships with big publishers. But there's a kind of a opening below that is a big opportunity for a smaller company to come in and look for different ways to basically exercise that opportunity to continue to address those fans.
But you're saying that they're susceptible to developers approaching them about potential partnerships, do you think?
I think they are. I mean, it's funny because Axiomatic's primarily set up for esports. They own Team Liquid. Likewise with March Capital, who's another one of our investors, Gregory Milken, who's there, who's actually our board member from March, is a big investor in the Immortals. There's a big crossover going on right now between esports and traditional sport. They understand the business of what esports could be, but they have a high interest in what gaming and traditional sports, where they meet in the middle, but not necessarily with the idea that it has to cross over into esports or anything like that. So it's really about kind of building a pool of content where they can basically bring the most value outside of money, and of which, obviously they have a lot of that too, which helps. So.
We touched on earlier about other games. So you got FIFA and your Maddens, which are huge,
sure.
And on mobile as well now. So how are you getting in? What kind of games are you looking at? You're looking at kind of short and fast sessions. So are you looking at hyper casual, ad driven? Or are you looking at in-app purchases?
We're more IAP. I mean, from our standpoint, we're not anti-advertising in any way, but I think probably more in the vein of the way traditional sport treats advertising, more sponsorships or affiliation deals rather than ongoing in-game advertising. That's the way we're looking at it. But yeah, the games we're looking to produce are definitely the biggest thing is competition. So head-to-head, synchronized, short session. You're talking kind of in the 3 to 5 minutes. Easy to play, hard to master style of gaming. And obviously for us, it's a mobile-first approach, and that's really driven by going after the kind of the largest market, addressable market we can find. But we're also looking at console and PC as follow-on.
Would you be looking at things like cross-platform? Can that work with what you're planning to do, even with 3 to 5 minute sessions?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think cross-platform, I mean, has been proven out this for sure. This year has been the year where cross-platforms come together. I think as we move forward, cross-platform play is, I won't call it a prerequisite, but I think it's something that's here to stay and definitely is a smart way to go with your games if you can. Whether they're, it doesn't matter if they're 3 minutes or 3 hour gameplay sessions. I think the more you can involve players on whatever, whether they're on mobile or console or PC or whatever other future gadget or gizmo that comes out that's game capable, it only makes sense to me that if you can, allow everybody to play each other when and where they are.
Would you definitely advise people then to, when they're making a mobile game, even with those sort of, to definitely do that if it works for them? Because obviously user acquisition is quite an expensive thing on mobile, so then to think about how you're going to market something on PC.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's going to have to take their own path. The marketing side of it's a different story. I mean, I think just from a pure gameplay, what's best for the audience, I'm a full endorser of cross-platform gameplay. But I think when it comes to user acquisition, marketing, development cost, I think that's a case-by-case basis.
I was just thinking still with the consolidation of just the mobile games industry,
Sure.
and we were talking about those big games. Sometimes maybe a brand's not even enough. You still need to have backing of millions of dollars.
For sure. I think the more creative you can get with your whatever type of user acquisition you're after, I mean, I think branding certainly can help. It hasn't necessarily proven to be, a silver bullet necessarily in all cases. What I favor is more probably geared towards a heavy focus, more of a laser focus on certain segments of gamers, rather than going after a kind of a shotgun approach where you're trying to kind of just smash it out to all gamers and all types. I mean, it's one of the big reasons why, from a lock and key standpoint, one of the thing that we love about sports is we know the type of people we're looking to engage. We know the type of gamers we're trying to find, and generally, they're watching sports, they're going to sport events, they're playing sports, and they're engaging with sports, in a gaming form as well.
So one thing that I personally enjoy most about certain sports is the tactical depth. So not just the quick pace, but when there's a lot more thought going into it. So it could be like one-off pieces of skill, or like if you watch snooker, when they're just trying to hit one ball. It's just fascinating.
It's a thought process.
So how important is it to get that tactical depth, even in a game that you're trying to get short and simple gameplay?
Well, I think, for us it's important to capture the flavor of the sport. I mean, don't get me wrong, I totally understand what you mean. I watched the NFL playoffs last night till about 6 a.m. So that was definitely a longer sit-down session. But I think for us, it's more about gamers' ability to access the sport. So I think that from a tactical standpoint, you want to be able to capture the essence of it, but you don't necessarily need to capture it from a simulation standpoint, if that makes sense.
How important is social to this genre? Because you're talking about real-time play as well. So adding in social mechanics, is that something you need? I mean, there's some very good single-player games like Miniclip did Football Strike, which is fantastic.
It's a good one.
But then you've got Golf Clash.
Golf Clash is good as well.
Which has a really good social element. So how important is it?
I think it's really important. I think the more you can build in, if it's a clan system kind of thing, we think of it as, more leagues and teams, and obviously we bring our own thematic sport view to it. But I think the more you can interconnect the people that you're playing with on an ongoing basis, the better off you are. And that's true about pretty much all games. And sports games in particular, I think there's always been an affinity towards that kind of community aspect of it, if you want to call it that. I mean, players like to be on teams, teams like to be in leagues, leagues like to win. That's it.
So you're talking a bit about clans there, and being a sports game, at least from a UK football perspective, I can say that people are very passionate. It's a horrible word to use these days, but very passionate about the teams they support, but then it can be very toxic to other fans. And then put that in a game space, that could lead to, well, all manner of issues. So do you think, are there best practices and ways to integrate those social elements?
I think there is. I mean, when you're talking about, fandom from the sense of, oh, you're a Man City fan or a Man U fan, and the two shall not cross kind of thing.
It can be playful banter, but also...
Yeah, but I think when it comes to gaming, it's more about how do we kind of involve all fans of football under the same style of game where, it might not be in a situation in our games where we're actually even facing off in that sense. It may be more of an eclectic mix where, more similar to fantasy sports. Not that we're really engaging in a fantasy sports style, statistically driven types of games. But we do like the nature of the way people engage with sports through fantasy and that they don't have it does alleviate that, a specific territoriality when it comes to a team-by-team affinity. And that, we actually view that as a strength. You've got a real-world connection where, in other games, in other types of games, whether it's, just general RPGs or RTS or MOBAs or whatever, with games that are, dragons and dwarfs and goblins and, it's great. And I've been a gamer since I was a kid, and I love every type of game that's out there, but I think with sport games, you've got a relationship with the real world, and that's a huge advantage. So we can go out and we can work with different communities that are either working with the sports as they go on in professional sports or even amateur sports, where we can actually bring what happens on the field, on the pitch, in the ring, into the game itself. So, it's good.
Do you think that you so with the games that you're going to make, are you a live event's going to be important as well? You're going to have to bring it into the real world in terms of, there's like the Super Bowl's happening, so you've got to do a special Super Bowl game.
The Patriots are going. Did I tell you that?
Oh, my knowledge of American football is...
I'm a Boston guy. So that's real world events, I think are, again, you get back to something that bucks the trend of mobile gaming in a way where, you look at things like whether it's WrestleMania or the Super Bowl or the Masters for golf or the British Open, frankly, or the World Series in baseball. There's a huge amount of attention. Even on an event-by-event basis, you've got, games going all week in and out where you've got tens of thousands of very focused, very attentive, I'll call them, fans. People that we can go and engage in the games.
Hey, Craig, you've got time for about one question.
I was just about to say, does anyone in the audience want to ask a question?
Questions? Anyone? Go on.
All a bit shy today.
Big boy, any questions back there? My PR guy in the back.
Can we hear some more from you, John?
See? That's PR. We just got back from practicing the two-man luge for the last 3 days.
I guess as another last question, do you have any more tips for dealing with sports brands and companies? How's that process work?
Tips for, I think if it's from a development standpoint or for a publisher standpoint?
Let's talk from a developer standpoint.
Well, if it's from a developer standpoint, I think proving out your concept and getting content on screen that speaks to what they're offering is important. Just like dealing with any other IP owner, to generalize it. But I think sports groups in general they're a bit tougher to reach, but they're also a bit more open when you get there, kind of thing. So I wouldn't back down from it. I think it's an interesting group of people to speak with. They like gaming. They like the idea of getting to younger demographics. A lot of these traditional sports that have been around for decades and not centuries have problems keeping the younger generation involved, and that's an ongoing fight for them. They're always looking to kind of plant the seeds of future fans. So it's a win.
Okay. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that.
John, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming, everyone.